It's a lot. I mean, this is my first time to attend this World Indigenous Business Conference, and just sitting down and learning from a lot of people that the challenges are very much principally the same, except the local scope and context is slightly different. I think Papua New Guinea, unlike the other countries, has got a different dimension to this particular issue.
Yes.
We are majority, indigenous people are majority,
Yes, that's right.
and our own people are really running the country. But in terms of the wisdom and trickling impact of making sure that whatever resource that is derived from all the projects and all the wealth of the country is spread out and shared evenly.
Well, I'm from Darwin. My heritage is that I'm part of the Mamu people of North Queensland and Luritja people from Central Australia. I think one of the biggest things that I'm going to take away, and they say, what are you going to do over the next 90 days? I'm going to be working on the declaration for Indigenous economic development between nations that have attended this week, and we're going to be putting together a framework and set of principles based on the United Nations Indigenous rights for Indigenous peoples around the world, and use this as a platform to develop a trade agreement between all of these Indigenous nations. Yeah, I know, it's amazing.
I believe an importance for the validity or the veracity or the acceptance of voice.
Yes.
In our country, voice is expressed. But once you express a thing and no one responds to it, you begin to believe that your voice matters nothing. And when you come to Australia and when you hear from Guatemala, as we did today, and other places, you realize that's the same. But in an international forum, voice begins to have a validity, begins to have a veracity, a strength to it. It's remarkable how common the experience is between Indigenous peoples across this globe. Just absolutely stunning. One unique uniting factor was the fact that one must give back to the community.
Making sure that business owners actually have a really good advisory board. I don't mean a board in the sense of having a formal board of directors, but having people in their advisory network outside the organisation who can point them in the right direction of where to go to find high net worth individuals, venture capitalists and other investors to help grow their business.
I think there's a number of things businesses can do. Firstly is to understand a lot more about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, our relationships with land, our social relationships, to understand some of the issues that will impact on their doing business with us. I think the other is to look at some really meaningful and enduring partnerships, and that shouldn't always, and I know this is hard for some corporates to understand, it shouldn't always be about money, because for an Aboriginal enterprise, particularly a community enterprise, it's about engagement, employing our people, looking at divesting some of the profits back into the community. So it's very much a social activity, even though it might be for a for-profit company, it's also got a social orientation to it.
The question will be on every young entrepreneur's lips. It's like really good advice. What's really needed to build a successful business, a startup? Yeah,
well look, I think the first thing is have a go. But before you go and invest any money into it, go and test your idea out. Go and talk to other people who are in business, particularly Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander businesses that exist out there, something that might be similar to what you're doing. Find out about some of the loopholes in getting into business, but don't be deterred. You know, if you've got a vision, if you think it's going to work, test it. You know, establishing a mentor relationship with somebody is so important, and don't commit money first up. Do yourself a business plan. Try and understand the environment that you're working in, the people you're working in, and look at groups like AMSI that are out there, the Australian Indigenous Minority Suppliers Council. Talk to their businesses to find out, because there might be opportunities for them to be able to access some sort of support through getting a contract if they become a registered business, or talk to some of the government instruments out there, Indigenous Business Australia if you're into a big activity, or you know, some of the state and territory based business groups. But the key thing is, if you've got a vision, if you've got an ambition, test it and then go into it. But test it before you go and invest in it.
That's very, very wise. Yep. Thank you very much.
The greatest thing that governments can do is to invest, but that investing is in education, training and skilling, which gives our people those skills to become competitive within an economic environment, but also to support them in establishing businesses, giving them the understanding. Because sometimes when we set up a business, we think it's easy, but it's not, because you've got red tape that you have to deal with, you've got legislative and legal requirements, but then you've got the way in which you manage cash flow, pay your taxes, and look, not filling out your tax returns or providing your tax becomes a problem. So it's all of those, and if we can change the way in which people get access to that information, then that will make a difference. And if people want to expand overseas, then what do you need to do to ensure that your contracts overseas are also going to give you a guaranteed pathway into growing outside of our borders?
I am so honored, and I am really so appreciative once I meet our peoples, and it's something that always gives energy. It gives synergy. It gives a feeling of, this is what it's all about. When everyone meets and everyone shares the stories and ideas and says, this is the hope that we have for the future, and that's what this conference, this is what our peoples are all about. And that's the beauty of what we have this past week, and I think that's the beauty that we have as Indigenous peoples around the world.
Look, I was asked to come and speak, so I spoke yesterday at one of the breakout sessions. Well, the thing I've really taken out of it is actually, we have some challenges in New Zealand, but they're nothing like the challenges that the people have got here.
That's
so I've come away from it feeling a bit fortunate. I'm really interested by the, what's happening in the natural resources space in Australia and Canada. It's just interesting for me to see what's happening in this space and how people are dealing with it. We've got big environmental concerns around oil exploration, whereas in Canada and Australia, you seem to be much more accepting of that happening. And the discussion's more about royalties, whereas our discussion's more about actually whether it should happen at all.
Exactly, I like that.
Stories that were shared by the Canadians in particular, and the people from Manitoba.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely inspirational, and I believe that from this forum that we will continue that relationship and that connection, and I look forward to sharing our experiences together, and then learning from our brothers and sisters in Canada to advance Indigenous economic development in Australia. The one wonderful thing out of the forum is that I really feel a sense of that unitedness. There's talk of coming together and forming an Indigenous Chamber of Commerce.
One of the biggest things that I have that's come out of this particular forum is there's connecting with our Canadian and North American brothers and sisters. There's so many similarities. There's so many, parallels between what we're trying to do here and what's happening over there, and very much advanced in a lot of their ways over there. And they're certainly learning. They feel very similar to where we are here. In various capacities. But I guess for us, it's about developing some of those strategic partnerships with some of those Canadian organisations and businesses. We're all we honour, we respect those who have fought the good fight before us, and it's now the time for the next generation, the younger generation, to come through with this. It's 2012 and there's an amazing activity of Indigenous business happening throughout this country, and we're walking into the boardrooms of the large corporates in this country, large government organisations, to say, well, here we are, we're taking advantage of those opportunities that are given for us, and really delivering on those. So the younger generation, even younger than myself, can see that and say, well, you know what, one day I can do that, because I know that when I was a young fellow growing up in Rocky, I saw those leaders and thought, one day I want to be like that, and I didn't back down from that opportunity. So running with that, I feel very blessed to be in a conversation that's happening with the World Indigenous Business Forum, that we're kicking goals and really making success for our people.
a border ruffian from the state of Missouri. I am a Connecticut Yankee by adoption. In me you have Missouri morals and Connecticut culture. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the combination which makes the best man.